Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. It's wonderful to be here with you this morning. And guess what? It's absolutely pouring out rain. And if you hear thunder, and we haven't had lightning, but we have had thunder clapping. I used to tell my kids when they were little, it's God clapping and everything's okay. But we're adults now, so if you hear thunder, we're all okay. I'm using the phone so that we shouldn't get disconnected. And welcome to this morning's broadcast. My name's Linda, I'm your certified trauma recovery coach. And this morning we're going to have a chit chat about the outer critic and why it's important, what we can do, how we can recognize it. And believe me, when I was writing up the notes, I was going, I used to do that, I can see that. And we all do it. If you're here for the first time, welcome. It's a beautiful global family that we have, and we create a really safe and loving and kind environment for everybody. And remember to hit subscribe and your notifications to know when I go live. This week, this will be my last live because I've got 2 pretty full days for the rest of the week. Can you believe it's hump day already? I can't. Shout out and say g'day as the thunder rolls on. Okay, now we want to talk about the outer critic because it's really, really, really important. Good morning, Laura. It's wonderful to have you here. We hear a lot about the inner critic. We do. And we do recognise that we have an inner critic. Let's all stick our hands up. Yes, I recognise I have an inner critic. And the inner critic is driven by the perfectionism. It can be driven by when we have inflexible thinking. Okay, love you too, Sean. And so much more. But tonight, I think I need to go back to bed. It's been a crazy morning. I went to go to gym early, but we can't get into gym, the 24/7 gym, because it's flooded, so we can't go in unstaffed hours. So, you know, silly me, I rocked up at 4 something and you can't get in till 5. So it's, I came home and did work. So today it's based on Pete Walker's book, which I have on hand. Okay. If you haven't got it yet and you've got complex PTSD, grab it because it explains everything easy. Now, this information on the inner critic is in the book, all right? But you can also resource an extensive article just by searching outer critic, because as far as I'm aware, so far he's the only one talking about it in this way. So I've not melted it down in context, but Pete likes to use a lot of big words because, of course, he is a doctor. So, oh, am I upside down? You know what? Oh, all right. I don't know what's happening. I'll have to turn the thing around later. Is the book upside down? Okay. Am I upside down? It's back to front. It's this crazy way of recording, because at the moment I can't do it on my computer. All right, so let's get stuck into the outer critic. And if the video is upside down, I'll turn it around after we've finished, so you get me upside down. Oh, the camera's fine. Oh, good. The book was upside down. Is that better? It might be back to front. Is that better, Sean? Just let me know. Okay, so grab the book. All right, so let's get stuck into this information. And at the end of this recording, these sheets will be up in the free resources in the Conscious Warrior Academy. So the outer critic is the same as our inner critic, except instead of being afraid of connection with ourselves, with who I am, we're afraid of connection with other adults, okay? and it can be isolating. So the outer critic perseveres with a dialogue of how others are not perfect enough or are unsafe, they're dangerous for us, they're too imperfect or too unsafe for us to risk an emotional connection with them. So I want you to think about times that you've come across other people and all of a sudden you're making an absolute list of the reasons why you don't want to become emotionally connected. I'll do that later. I'll put a link up to the book when we're finished. Okay, so the outer critic isolates us by creating exaggerated lists of the potential shortcomings or disloyalties or area of disloyalties in other people. So we sit back and we go, yeah, I can see that. And what's our language today? Red flag. That's a red flag for me, I'm out of here. That's a red flag for me, I'm out of here. When the reality is, it may be a red flag, but if we're prepared to step forward and have an adult conversation to and from, then we're going to be able to determine whether it's our outer critic, jumping in and trying to stop us getting emotionally connected even just a little bit, or it is a definite red flag. All right, so we've got to be willing to risk at least a little bit and have a conversation. Obviously, if it's a bright red flag waving in your face, don't ignore it. Which we've been known to do if we're dissociating, by the way. Okay, so it literally is, so the outer critic is literally trying to protect us from abandonment by scaring us into it. Okay, so think about it. It's trying to protect us from actually feeling our abandonment wound by scaring us back into isolation, which is abandonment. So it's a repetition because we're scared that someone will come into our life and repeat how our parents treated us. That's it in a nutshell. You can make it bigger and longer and wider, but in a nutshell, we carry around a deep fear that this person's going to treat us like our parents did. And whilst that fear is unconscious, right, you must understand, because I'm bossy this morning, you must understand that it's driven from the unconscious. It's not something we go around consciously thinking, and this is why we need to do the work, all right? Because if we don't do the work, then we risk losing having good, healthy, deep connections in our life, or we risk never having them, actually. So in order to experience, let me just get this up for you. So in order to experience the soothing comfort of connection with others, a connection that we have often yet to experience, we must work at breaking the power the outer critic has on our mind. Okay, so remember, if it's unconscious, it jumps into the conscious, and then it's powerful. We have automatic responses to that. We can be triggered, we can go into dissociation, and we've got to build this internal awareness. So the outer critic obsessively fantasizes, consciously and unconsciously, about how people may or may not hurt us. So you want to listen to your thoughts and see if you have thoughts like this. Don't trust anyone. Do you think that, or do you say that? Proud to be a loner, and we've all said that when we've been hurt cripplingly as an adult. Or the other one is, yeah, I'm okay on my own, I'm happy. And we genuinely can be happy on our own, but we still do need connection with other people because we're wired for it. It's a healthy thing to have. Another thing we can say is you can only depend on yourself. If I had $1 for everyone that I heard years ago say, the only person I can depend on is me, and said in a rather sarcastic, like, everybody else is, then I'd be rich. We can't do this. We can't do this to ourselves anymore. Another one is lovers always leave you, or men always leave us, or women always leave me. So think about the context in your life of what are you saying? Oh, this always happens in relationships. So it may not be that they always leave you. It may be like, oh, I always attract the deadbeats or the ones that are going to hurt me. All right. These are the things that we've got to look for, because this language is showing us when the outer critic has jumped forward to try and protect us. Kids will break your heart. I've heard that a lot of times too. They do, but you know, we negotiate our way through it. Only fools let on what they really think. Give them an inch and they'll take a mile. I think that's a really old one. Give them an inch and they'll take a mile. I know my parents used to say that. So if you've got things like that happening, this is the outer critic coming into play as a defense mechanism to keep you safe. But what it does is keep you from connecting deeply with other adults, because it feels unsafe to do that, because as children, we never experienced it. And how do you know that you never experienced it as a kid? Well, if you didn't have at least one person that you could go to emotionally as a child, this happened for you. If you had no one that you could go to where you could feel emotionally nurtured, like you could feel safe, you could feel that warmth. See, it never happened for me and I'm having trouble explaining it, but feel that comfort from them. I did feel that a bit from my nan, but not physically, not in the physical sense, just the comfort that I wouldn't get hurt or that I was safe. Laura said, you've given me a big understanding of the inner critic. I never thought that it was the inner critic who criticizes others. A greater understanding now, thanks. This is actually the outer critic. So the inner critic is like the perfectionist thinking that has a go at us, that tells us, you know, we're hopeless, we've got it wrong, we'll never get it right, you haven't done it good enough, etc., etc. But the outer critic, it's the one that makes the list, all right, about what other people are like before we even know them. Okay, so the dynamics of the outer critic are often hidden by minimization and denial, all right? So we hide it away and we tell ourselves, oh, well, you know, I didn't really mean that, or that's not really true, or, you know, no, I didn't say that. No, I'm not thinking that. And we've got to stop it, because the only person that we're hurting is ourselves. We really have to get hold of these thoughts. Okay, so as we choose to develop an ever deepening awareness of the outer critic, it can be a vital clue for when we are in an emotional flashback. Now, we've done a video on emotional flashbacks, Pete Walker's 13 Steps. So in the book, and like I said, I will put the link to the book in the comments down below when I'm finished, because it is important that we wrap our mind around what's happening for us internally, because as we do that, we then begin to go, oh, that's what's happening, and now I can adapt and change and grow from it. So intimacy in the outer critic, so complex PTSD typically includes an attachment disorder. All right, so go and look at, and Pete explains all the different attachment disorders, which arise from the childhood experience of not having at least one caretaker safe enough to go to for comfort or help. So in my life, I can look back and no, that didn't happen. My mum, like when things would happen for me, like my heel was absolutely killing me as a young teenager. And I said to my mum, look, it's hurting, I can't wear shoes. And her response was, well, take yourself to the doctor. Yeah, like I'm 13, how do I do that? You know, oh, it's just down the road, just go to the doctor. You know, just like, oh my goodness. So this was a lot of the things that happened in my life were around that, and it happened from a young age. So usually we end up uber responsible as well, not just for ourselves but for others. The passive aggressiveness and the outer critic. As children, we're wired to respond to parental abuse with anger. So grab hold of that. We're wired to respond to abuse with anger, but we learn quickly that anger is punishable, so we turn it inwards and it becomes resentment, bitterness. So think of a time when you blew everything out of proportion, and it can be as an adult. All right, that's quicker. This is when the outer critic is prompting you on saying, we are not safe, okay? We're in danger, or the person is dangerous to us. Now, as an adult, we'd probably look at it and say, right, why would my brain respond like that? Why is my wiring responding like that? And it's because they're triggering the abandonment wound, and they're not saying, I see you, I hear you, I care about you, I understand in any way, shape or form. They're usually saying it's all about them and there's no care factor for us, all right? And it's not that we're perfect. I look back and I think, oh my goodness, you know, I used to lose the plot, but I didn't know I'd lost the plot because I felt unsafe, all right? We had no language. Just a short trip back down the road in my life. We didn't. We have not had this language or understanding. Whereas when we have the language and say, oh, look, I've just lost the plot, you know, I've let anger out, and I can say, right, I've been triggered, you know, at the unconscious level. I'm not feeling safe. So I need to sit down as an adult and have communication with the other adult in my life. And I do this with my adult kids. Nick and I were out shopping one time, and I don't know what he said to me, but it just triggered me into that unsafe mode. And when I get angry, I don't explode. I just be quiet. So I have this quiet anger where I just mull everything over and try and work it out. So anyhow, we got the shopping done. And we have a special thing where we go out and have dinner together on a Friday night. So we're going out to dinner, and he says to me, you need to tell me what's wrong. And it was the first time in my life that I've actually opened up and said, well, this is what I'm feeling and this is why I'm feeling it. And I don't know what to do about it just yet, but, you know, this is the reality. And we've had a number of those conversations, and they're actually really good to have with somebody who will just listen. He didn't want to solve it, but he was actually able to say, well, this is his part in it and this is what he can do. And then that freed me up to be able to go, oh, cool. Then I can do my part and I can learn to talk about things better. All right. It's always a learning process. We can't beat ourselves up. Now, we can move back and forth between our outer critic and our inner critic. And so think of a time you were stuck between the other person is inadequate, only to turn the commentary within yourself to I'm inadequate, all right, which is toxic shame, pardon me. This denies us our crucial need to belong and has us going between the extremes of too good for others or not good enough to be loved, all right? So when you can see both of those things happening, you know that the outer critic's been triggered. You know that the inner critic's happening as well, and you can do some work around that. Okay, so how are we going to stop the inner critic from, you know, running rampant and ruining the chances we have of really healthy relationships? So we need to not only stop our thoughts from going down the same old paths. So if you find yourself, and look, think of the most simplest thing. You find yourself in the car and driving down the road, and all of a sudden you're making a list of why the driver in front of you really shouldn't have a license, right? Go, ask the questions. Am I feeling unsafe? You know, what's annoyed me? What's triggered me? What's going on? And then what we want to do is turn it around and name 5 things or 10 things, it's up to you, that are good, not just in our life, but about the other person, the possibilities. And we want to keep doing this. Remember, for us to have recovery, It has to be consistent and committed to changing what's happening at a mind level and emotional level, which nobody else can do for us. Okay, there's no one who can do this work for us. All right, and we want to say to ourselves, make our self-talk, I'm safe to belong. And I know for me, with all the business stuff I'm doing, it makes me feel really unsafe to go out amongst my peers now. And so I have to affirm I am safe to belong. I have my role to play in the world. Everybody has a different role. We can build each other up and make my talk around there are more good people in the world than the people who, you know, raised me or were there at the time or not there, as the case may be. Okay, so we want to give ourselves some really positive, you would call it positive self-talk, except that we know that our emotions, our heart's got to be involved as well. All right, so another way to defuel the outer critic is through grieving. So I liked this. If fear is the temporary death of feeling safe, all right, so if I don't feel safe, I feel afraid, then as children we are wired to release fear through anger and crying. So angering can rescue us from a childlike sense of powerlessness. So that means if we get angry, we can feel like we've got power to change the situation. Okay? And crying actually goes hand in hand with the anger as part of the grieving process, and it also cuts off the critic's emotional fuel supply. Okay, so remember, all the thoughts are being driven by the emotions for us. Tears can release fear before it turns into frightened and frightening thinking. So tears can also awaken our developmentally arrested sense of self-compassion. So because we didn't have that person that had us feel comfort when we were a child, then we need to do that for ourselves. And we also need to give ourselves some self-compassion that we're adults, this is going to happen, and I can feel that it's okay that I'm working this process. All right? Now, if we do that, it motivates us to keep going, to keep, not attacking as in, you know, bear down, but to keep chipping away at the problem and to keep going, right, I know I can succeed at coming through all of this, okay? And this way, because we're doing this, we establish internal boundaries against the critic, both the outer critic and the inner critic, okay? So grief work also reinforces us for the long-term gradual process of re-educating our psyche to make it more intimacy friendly by shrinking the outer critic, and more user friendly by reducing the inner critic. So if we've got the outer critic and the inner critic happening, then it's going to make it near impossible to have intimate, deep connections, which is ultimately what we want. Okay, we've craved it since childhood and not known it and not had language for why we couldn't achieve it, because often through adulthood too, I know I felt like, I'm here, can't you see me? You know, and we need to be willing to go down the road of putting the boundaries in place too. Now, all of this will be up in the Conscious Warriors Academy, and I will put this link in for you to the pages that I've worked with. Suzanne says, I honestly don't know how. I'm not sure what you don't know how, but let me know and I will comment down below. One of the things I do, this is one of the funny things I do, because we all know I like to be creative. Just let me grab it for you. In my bottom drawer. Okay, here it is. This is what I do. I like being creative with what we do. So when you realise that you're doing one or several of these things, you cut out a piece of cardboard and you write stop on it. And you actually get your partner or your kids to use a stop sign to say, stop. We need to stop going down this road, okay? And if we make it fun, then it takes a lot of the pressure off us as well. So put a stop sign up somewhere at home and then begin to teach kids, stop. We don't have to be angry. We can talk this through. We can communicate it through. We can use our stop sign, and the person who's got the stop sign, they get to talk. Everybody else has to stop, okay? So get the creative mode hooked in, and that way you're going to benefit yourself and your kids as well. Okay, lovelies, remember you are loved. I won't be in Thursday or Friday this week because I have big days. I love and appreciate each of you coming along, and I will see you next week for more complex PTSD TV. Bye for now.